Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 398 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is legacy. Our quote of the day comes to us from Maya Angelou. If you're going to live, leave a legacy. Make a mark on the world that can't be erased. If you have yet to subscribe to our show or left us a review, we would kindly ask if you could please do that. It might not seem like much, but it really helps us, and those reviews and subscriptions allow our show to reach a much wider audience and continue to grow our No Quit tribe. When it comes to the greats or the goats of personal development, the four on my personal Mount Rushmore are Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Napoleon Hill, and Bob Proctor. A couple years ago, I had the privilege of having Zig's son Tom on our show, and today I am honored to have Bob Proctor's son Brian join us. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Brian, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Well, thanks very much, Christopher. I'm really happy to be here.
I appreciate it. I know the answer already to this question, but I ask everybody, so I got to ask you, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
Absolutely. Hopefully we can get more to one.
So it's not a hidden secret who your father was, Bob Proctor. Before we went live, my definition, my opinion, just for me, when it comes to the Mount Rushmore of personal development, it's your father, Jim Rohn, and Zig Ziglar. So it's an honor to have you on the podcast. But the way we connected was your new book, My Father Knew the Secret, Growing Up with Bob Proctor. Fantastic book. I would highly recommend it to anybody that is looking to enhance their personal, professional life. It's got some amazing tidbits to it. But before we get into that, a question I always ask everybody is if you have a no-quit story of your own, a time where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Boy, that's a great question. I would probably go back almost 25 years. I started a quote of the day service on the internet, and this was before anybody was doing something like that. I just started working for my father. I was in the real estate business for many years. I got out of it. My father talked me back into working for his company, and I was selling for the seminar company. And quite honestly, I wasn't enjoying the selling portion of it. I wanted to contribute in a different way. And I thought, when I was successful in real estate was because I stayed in touch with our clients. So I was looking for a way that we could stay in touch with our clients in the seminar business. My dad, obviously, as you know, was a pretty predominant speaker, but we had no way of staying in touch with people. So I thought, I'm going to create a program where I would send out an email. It was simply an inspirational quote, Monday to Thursday, and every Friday would be an uplifting story. I thought, when I was a young boy, Dad left these booklets around the house called Bits and Pieces. And they're just little tiny books that would give inspirational quotes, little short stories that were all inspirational. And they really touched me. And I thought, I know this will touch people out there. And sometimes all somebody needs to read is a positive quote or some inspirational story to change the course of their day and sometimes even their life. So, Christopher, I started this crazy thing where I would send out these emails, and I had never even owned a computer at this point. This was like late 90s, right around 2000. Never had an email address. And I thought we had maybe 300 email addresses. Obviously, my father has thousands upon thousands of clients, but we only had 300 email addresses. And I started this business of just sending out inspirational messages just to stay in touch. It was really difficult. I had not a clue what I was doing. This was in the days before there was Aweber, MailChimp, all these services that send out for you today. So I had to send the messages out from my computer. And it was a lot of work. I had to subscribe people, unsubscribe if they didn't want to be on it. And it was all manual. And it was not scalable, let's face it. So it was a real learning experience. I had my internet service provider cut me off one time. They thought I was spamming because I was sending out so many emails. So I had to prove that, these people wanted to be on the list. And I had this vision of how great this service would be. And I kept hitting roadblocks because it was not a scalable thing at the time. It was really tough. But I just kept forging through because I knew there was value in this. We went out with an offer on a simple book and a DVD. And at that time, I think the list was maybe 700 people. And I might have sold around 30 programs. Well, that all of a sudden made me realize there's value in this as well. Mm-hmm. And that really kept me going. And, I'd get knocked off because I couldn't send it out with the service providers. I was forever looking for software that could send out the messages. And it was difficult work in the early stages, but I kept at it. And it might not be a great example of the no quit thing, but there were so many roadblocks to doing this service back in that day that I could have quit at any time because it was not monetizing in the initial stages. It probably took me 3 years before it actually started to earn an income. However, because I kept at it, I found myself into the world of affiliate marketing and all kinds of things. And I started earning millions of dollars from building this program. But it took years before I got to that point. And, so many people, they start something and if they're not earning big money right away, they quit. And it's like, what's that all about? If you have a passion for something, get on it, get with it, and don't quit. It's your no quit theme is spectacular for this. And so I just stuck with it. I was focused on it, driven, and just kept at it. And now, obviously, everything works so much easier with the programs there are today, and it's a walk in the park today. But in that day, it was not so easy.
I love that story, and you touched on it briefly in your book. But to me, anybody that I've looked up to that's had success, I don't know a story where it's, I had this idea on a Monday, and then by Tuesday I was a multimillionaire, and Wednesday I retired. It's always the opposite. But I think in today's day and age, especially with technology and social media, people post their highlights, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think where that disconnect lies is I look at your end result of that third year or the fourth year, and I'm like, wow, if Brian did this, I should be able to replicate it in a week. And yes, with technology, things are easier today than it was when you did it, but it's not about that success. It's about those roadblocks and those obstacles and what you learn and who you become along the process. And I just love that story. So for any of our listeners out there, just listen to what Brian said. Is it took over 3 years for this to work. Think about those things that you're working on now, whether it's a program, a podcast, a book. It's not about just focusing on being successful right now. It's about how do you deal with those roadblocks and obstacles along the way.
Yeah, well, you know what, Christopher, the big thing my father said, if you have a worthy goal, a goal that's big enough, you're not going to have a clue how you're going to get there. You won't know all the steps you need to take. And sometimes you have to take what he called imperfect action. And it's just stepping out and doing something towards your worthy ideal. And you're going to hit all kinds of roadblocks. But my God, if you can just keep pounding through those, you'll find your way. And your whole no quit mentality is the way to go. You just got to keep forging the way. And he always said, it's not achieving the goal that's the big deal. I mean, that's always great, and that's the reward at the end of it. But he said, what it is the growth that takes place while you're getting there. The things you learn is just, it's life-changing if you just keep forging your way.
Speaking of goals, I got to pick your brain for a second. You touched on some really incredible things in the story, but wanted to just maybe pick your brain real quick. Is obviously having your father, I would assume, helped in some ways, but what's your process today? Are you still setting goals actively? And maybe for a listener that is struggling with it, do you have a suggestion that maybe you would recommend as somebody that is either looking to maybe dive a little deeper into goals or has struggled with how to really go about setting them?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great thing to talk about. It's we found most people actually don't have worthy goals. Most people are just doing day by day and are in a routine. And my father had a really good way of choosing a goal, and that is to really give thought to something that truly inspires you. He said, a goal that you know how to get is not a worthy goal. There's no inspiration in that. You're not going to learn anything achieving that. Some people pick a new car as their goal, or there's and you can find your way. If you do this and you do that, you'll get there. Well, there's no inspiration in that. He always said the best way to choose a goal, he called them C-type goals, and these are goals that you don't have a clue how you're going to get there. He says to just imagine you've got a magic wand, and to sit quietly and just, if you had a magic wand and could have anything in your life, what would that be? And start writing the list down, and start looking at that list and start culling it down, and don't let the paradigms in your head that say, oh, I'm not worthy of this, or oh, there's no way I could do this, get in your way. At this moment in time, it's just a magic wand and you could have anything. What is that? And something will come that inspires you. And it's got to be something so big that it drives you, that you are going to do whatever it takes, that you don't have a clue how you're going to get there. That's the big thing. And that's where the growth is going to take place. That is what he called a worthy goal or a worthy ideal. And if you have a worthy ideal, you're going to step out and do things in a day that you would never normally do. That's the deal. And yes, I still set goals. I still have a big worthy goal right now that I'm working towards, and I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm taking the steps every day to do whatever it takes to get there.
I love that. And I work, as I mentioned, with a bunch of college teams and sales teams and companies. And one of the things that I find is a disconnect with goals, and would love your 2 cents on this, is it's always a good thing to speak to others, whether someone's been in the business longer than you or someone's at a level you want to get ideas and suggestions. But to your point about your suggestion, what your dad said about your specific goals, those C-type goals, your goal, if it's more important to somebody else than it is to you, or it means more to somebody else than to you, the likelihood of you accomplishing it and then sticking to it when you have those roadblocks, I think diminishes significantly. So I think what you said and what you shared about those huge goals, it reminds me of, and I'm going to quote your father in the book, which I posted it on social media a couple of days ago. If you know what to do to reach your goal, it's not a big enough goal. I read that, I highlighted, I underlined it. I actually screenshot it to a bunch of my friends and clients. But I think a lot of people set those goals where they know how to get there, and it's those comfortable goals. But I think to your point, it's setting those huge goals and then just figuring out how to do it.
Yeah, well, the huge goals are going to cause you to do things you wouldn't normally do. And that's the key. That's it. It's, everybody likes to complicate these things. It's not that complicated. If you're willing to step out and do things that make you uncomfortable, but that will get you there, you're onto something good.
Yeah, and I could not agree more, which leads me to something that I'm actually really excited to talk to you about, the concept and the idea of affirmations, vision boards, and is something that you spoke about in your book, which is writing a letter to your future self. I know I touched on vision boards, affirmations, and writing a letter to your future self, but was wondering if you wouldn't mind just expanding a little bit on those, because you speak and write about them so eloquently in your book.
Well, so one of the things my father really, he was a big studier. He never thought he had it all. He studied right up until the day before he passed away. And one of the big things that he had learned over the years is that you have to live into whatever it is that you want. You have to live from that place, and you have to act as if you're already there. So, the great part about writing this letter, and what I talk about in the book, is that you need to sit down, again, in a quiet space and think about where you want to be a year from now. and then write out a letter to yourself congratulating yourself for all the things you've accomplished, so that that letter is in the present tense. And you want to use descriptive words, how proud of yourself you are, and write it to yourself as and congratulate yourself on all these great accomplishments you've done. That is really a form of writing an affirmation. It's in the present tense, and it's where you want to be a year from now. Then you can read that every day. You can record it on your phone on a voice app and listen to it every day. You do mirror work. You can stand in front of the mirror and read it and look yourself in the eyes. The great thing with affirmations is really you're brainwashing yourself. It's in its simple form. You're changing the way you look at things. And when you first start to read it, you might not believe it. And if it's a really good one, you won't believe it at first. However, if you keep reading it, eventually you will believe it, and you're going to start living from that place, and you will start to become that person. Dad was always of the opinion we can be, do, or have anything we want in life if we give that our energy. And I think we all know whatever we think we bring into our life. So let's be careful about what we're thinking. So let's form an affirmation that's positive where we want to be. And a month, 2 months, 3 months is going to happen anyway. So why not focus on what you want and read it every day? And you watch where you'll be in just 3 months because of doing that. Is it an easy exercise? Yes. Is it tough to do? Probably, because it will be changing new habits to do it. However, the worthiness of doing it far outweighs anything, and you're gonna get there. I've always said, would you be friends with somebody that talked to you the way you talk to yourself? And you want to give that some thought. There's so many people that berate themselves, and when you start to do that from this point on, know that your awareness now will recognize that and alter that thought. And that is where, this whole affirmation piece of writing something in the present tense of where you want to be, it's all positive. You write it out in positive, and you keep reading that, you keep talking it, you will become that person.
I love that, and I appreciate you sharing that. And your father was involved in the movie The Secret, and where I think people have a disconnect, and I really liked the book The Secret. I've recommended to a bunch of people. I really enjoyed the movie, but where I think a lot of people had that disconnect was that affirmation perspective of believe it, say it, but then it's like, oh, then you just make it happen. And you talk about this, your father talked about it, so many people in the personal development space, it's that action behind it. And I think that's where there's a disconnect of people that have, I don't want to say negative opinions of affirmations or visualization or vision boards, but that's the starting point. But then step 2, 3, and 4 is, yes, you need to see it, believe it, but then you have to put the action in. And I think so many people kind of gloss over that part, and it's like, all right, I just think it, I see it, I tell Brian what I want to do, and they're like, well, how come 2 weeks from now I'm not a millionaire, a multimillionaire? It's like the next question is, okay, well, have you started a website? Have you spoke to somebody about writing the book, a publisher? It's like, no, but I thought about it and I said it to myself in the mirror, and I'm like, okay, that's the great first step, but you're missing step 2, 3, and 4.
Right. Well, and that's the part of the problem today is everybody wants that instant gratification. And, yes, you see that movie or you read the book and you think all I have to do is think about it and it'll come to me. Well, yes, that thinking about it is the start, but what it never did cover, and this is one thing my father was always harping on, is that you have to step out and do something as well. You've got to take action. And if your dream is worthy, if what you want is worthy, you need to do more than just think about it. You need to actually step into it and start doing something to get there. And that's when it's going to happen. It's the dreamers that are all saying this doesn't work because they just think they just dream it. I'm lazy. I'm not going to, if I just dream it, it's got to come into my life. Well, why doesn't that work for me? Well, it doesn't work for you because all you're doing is dreaming. You're not actually visualizing on what it is you want. And, I end the book, my last chapter is all about taking action because that is the key. Yes, we need to have our thoughts in the right place. We need to have a worthy goal, none of it will do any good if we don't step out and do something to work towards it.
I could not agree more, and I love how you word it. But back to your comment, how you ended the book, I think is perfect, because it's kind of that climax of learn, this is what my dad was about, but then it's like not that fall off the cliff. It's okay if you want A, B, and C. I've laid out so many great systems and routines and exercises you can do, but now it's like, okay, go ahead and take the action. Do you still create vision boards to this day?
I do.
Awesome.
Yes. I'll never stop with that stuff. I'm the first to say I'm living a pretty comfortable life. And it is because of everything I learned from my father. Dad never gave me anything. I had to go out and do it. I had to earn it. I had to find my way. And, I live by these concepts, and I'm proud to live by these concepts. Everything I learned, I had a very, very special relationship with my father, and everything he taught really is the truth. If you step out and do it and you practice it, my God, you can live a phenomenal life. And I've got so many friends that I made through the course of the years that came to our seminars, that are out there making it happen. Like yourself, they don't quit. They just keep at it. And I think you need to practice and use this material and study every day, always. My father was the best example I've ever seen. I held up a book, Christopher, that Dad was given in 1961, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Well, a few weeks ago, I was in Toronto visiting family, and I was staying at my father and Linda's house. And I asked Linda, I said, can I use that book for a minute? I was getting on an interview with somebody over in Denmark, and she said, sure. So she went and got it. And I held this book, and I mean, I could feel my father in this book. And it was held together with this great big thick rubber band. And I took the rubber band off and I opened the book up, and it was like falling apart. That is because he studied that book every day since 1961. Most people think they just read a book once and they got it, or I'm good with that, and move on to the next thing. Dad was always of the opinion, you get something good, you got to study it every day. And he would study a particular page for a couple of months. He would study it to the point that it was ingrained and became a part of his being. I think that's where I learned it from.
Your father was very similar to Zig Ziglar in that idea of the repetition. And I am part of a mastermind that I run. And as I mentioned before the recording, we had one of our meetings last night in person, and that exact topic came up. It's rereading something and then being intentional with what do you do when you learn it. And in no way am I saying to our audience, you need to read, every book, 500 times before you get it. But I know for a fact myself, with everything coming at us as quickly as it does today, new apps, social media technology, our minds are going today faster than before, but it's the repetition of going back, and I'm going to misquote it, but Zig was adamant about re-listening to, and he was the tapes and the audios way back when, but listening to a tape 5 and 10 times. And it's that 5th through 10th time that all of a sudden you got it. And for me, when I get to coach and teach and mentor teams or individuals or companies, only do I feel comfortable to teach it when I've read something a couple times, I've written it down, and I think your dad not only believed it, but obviously he preached it and he taught it throughout his entire life. I got to ask you, if you're reading anything currently, or if you've read something recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
There's a book I've been reading lately called Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Behrend. It's a small little book. It's an old book. And it's one of the books that my father read a lot. I don't know, right? I'm just resonating with it at this current moment. So that would be one of them.
I love that. Fun question I ask everybody, and I'm really, really intrigued to get your answer. If I could grant you dinner tonight with any 5 people, dead or alive, that you could level up with, who would you select?
Good question. So I'm going to say the first one would be my father. I miss him deeply. He was such a wise man and such a good man. So he would definitely be number one. Number two, maybe Warren Buffett.
Mm.
He's an interesting man. I don't know. There's some good energy around that man and some common sense around that man that I think there'd be a lot to learn from. So he's certainly around. Here comes a crazy one from the past. Abraham Lincoln. He's an interesting guy that failed himself to success. You talk about no quit. I mean, he's one of the best examples there is. Maybe I'm getting into the whole investment world. Kathy Wood. She's a female current Warren Buffett kind of. She'd be an interesting lady to talk to. I've seen some interviews with her, and she just looks very interesting to me as well. I got to give you one more, don't I?
You do. I would substitute myself in there, but that's not fair. I can't answer your question for you.
Maybe Oprah Winfrey.
Okay.
I'm up and down on all of her stuff, but I believe she supports a lot of really good things. I think she has changed a lot of things for the positive. And I don't know, there's something really good about her. I think it'd be really interesting to sit down with her as well.
That'd be a fascinating dinner. So the two most common answers to that question, number one is Jesus, and number two, ironically, is Abraham Lincoln. And I just posted something on Instagram yesterday, actually a short story of his failures up to becoming the president. And I just think the whole concept and idea of perseverance and not quitting and not giving up and going back to what you shared about your father, if it's that really big goal that you really and truly want, you'll figure out a way to do it. And I think Abraham Lincoln just epitomizes perseverance, that no quit attitude. And arguably he was a president in one of, I can't say the most, but one of the most challenging times in our country in many different avenues. But it's all about that mental perspective of I'm going to keep going. So wanted to ask you, leading into that, is we all face those obstacles and challenges. And to me, it's not a question of if you're going to have an obstacle or challenge in your life, it's when. But I think so many people just have that never give up mentality or attitude. Is it something that you feel that you're born with, ingrained with, or do you also feel that it's something that you can continue to build and strengthen along the way?
I believe it's something that is learned. I don't think you're born with it. I guess some people could be born with it, but I really think it's something that is learned. And it's learned through adversity, quite frankly. Can you forge yourself through that without giving up? It really goes back to what I said in the beginning. You need to have a worthy goal. If you have a worthy goal, you'll battle through that stuff. And, one of the things that stops us in our tracks, usually the most, is when we listen to those, and sometimes it's those people that are closest to us that knock us down and say, why the heck would you want to do that? Or, why don't you just, go back and do this or do that, quit trying to whatever. They'll knock you down. And where that inner strength needs to come from is to not worry about what others think of us. Let's face it, most of the time they're not thinking that much about us. And when they do knock us down or give us, try to talk us out of something, we have to go into ourselves and think, okay, that's their opinion. That's their idea. Do I want this? And if I want this, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to go forward. And sometimes you have to not listen to those closest to you if it's what you really want. And it's all about mindset, and it's all about staying committed to your goal, what it is that you want to do. And if you're committed, you will go through those roadblocks and you won't listen to the naysayers.
I really think that's powerful. And just to take it one step further, I think when it comes to mindset and perseverance and those type of things, whether you or our listeners or myself agree or disagree with you're born with certain things, because I think people make arguments both ways and they have merit. But to me, those are all skills that you can continue to sharpen, and there are things that you can get better at. And when it comes to mindset, mental toughness, mental performance, which are, in the media a lot nowadays, especially in sports and business, I think people gloss over a lot that, all right, well, Brian's just born with it, or because of who his dad was, it's natural. Yes, maybe in some ways, because who your dad was, you got a little bit more of that than some others, but you still have to continue to work on it. And I think that's the thing that people miss, where it's, well, like and I get this all the time. People say, well, you have, your whole no quit living, and, I'm just not a no quit person. And I always say, well, I was not a no quit person. It's not like I was born and my mom or dad or the doctor, smacked me on my forehead and said, okay, this is, no quit guy. It's something that I've worked on. But I was just telling a friend this morning, I get up crazy early in the morning to go to the gym, and most days I don't, quote unquote, want to get up. I would much rather stay in bed and sleep for another 15, 20, 30 minutes, but it's just continue to do it. So, maybe it's a tough question, but do you have a suggestion for maybe some of our listeners that just struggle with some of those mental performance type things, or struggle with some of those mindset? And you shared a couple exercises from your father about those goals, but is there something that you've done or shared with others about how to just continually work on your mindset?
Well, I think to work on it, it's really coming down to habits. And you talk about getting up extra early to go to the gym. Most people, they might do it 1 or 2 days or 3 days maybe. Then they're kind of sore, they're tired, and they think, I won't go today. I'll go tomorrow, and they quit. So many times we want to change everything in our life all at once. I know there's people listening that just want to go from where they're at to where they want to be all at once, that instant gratification thing. Well, it doesn't happen that way. I won't say it doesn't. It does once in a while, but most of the time it's a progressive experience. And I think the best way to change our thoughts, our paradigms, our habits is by just changing one thing at a time. Don't try to do everything at once. And like you say, getting up, an hour earlier and working out. Is that a tough thing to do? It can be, it can't be. It all depends on your way of thinking. But if you were to start with just that one thing, that one habit, and just keep working on it. And when you don't feel like doing it, you have to recognize, be aware of your thought and think, okay, this is my old paradigm trying to kick in and make me stop. I'm going to fight this right now, and I'm going to go and have that workout. And I know, Christopher, I can say with confidence, you probably had those days, but you still went and did it. You didn't feel like it, but my God, didn't you feel great at the end of it?
It's funny. So many people post things on social media, and I think I've posted it probably a bunch of times myself, but I don't know anybody that's gone out and really had a really good workout, and after the fact has said, I really regret that. I really wish I would have given half effort, or instead of 45 minutes, I should have done 2 minutes. Now during it, you probably say some choice words that I won't repeat on the podcast, but after, you feel better. And I think, to your point, it's you get to that old way, that mental block of, I used to, this is usually where I always stopped. But as you continue to move and keep going. So I have to ask you, Brian, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, find out more about you, but also to find out more about your book? And selfless plug here, just because of how good I think it is. Definitely grab yourself a copy of My Father Knew the Secret, Growing Up with Bob Proctor. Fantastic book. But again, just please let our listeners know where they can find you, follow you, and also find out more about your book also.
Well, thanks, Christopher. Yeah, you can just go to brianproctor.com. That'll have everything there. You can purchase the book. It'll drive you to Amazon. You can find the book on Amazon. But if you go to brianproctor.com, you'll see some more information about me. You'll be able to connect with me. Certainly you'll be able to get some extra bonuses when you purchase the book. I do some Q&As, and I'm going to do some live things that way that will just kind of continue on with the message of what's in the book. And I'm really all about delivering value. What can I do to deliver value? And I think as long as I can do that, we're doing the right thing.
I could not agree more. And last question I have for you is the same question I ask everybody, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Thank you. This would be it. My father was always of the opinion, he had a great statement. He said, "You cannot change the time you got out of bed this morning." And I always laughed when he said that, and I loved the meaning of it. What has happened in the past has happened in the past. We can't change it. All we can deal and do with is right now in the present moment. And my parting word would be the best version of you right now. Live in the moment. If you live in the moment, you'll never be anxious. You'll never live in regret. And be the best version of you.
I love that. I cannot thank you enough, Brian, for being on the podcast. Your dad was an amazing guy. As I said, he's on my Rushmore in the personal development space. But definitely for our listeners, grab a copy for somebody else. But I hope that you and I can connect again soon.
I'm sure we will. Thank you very much, Christopher.
Thank you for listening to episode number 398. I really enjoyed speaking with Brian. His father was someone that I truly looked up to, and as cliche as it may sound, the apple definitely doesn't fall far from the tree. In his parting words, Brian shared something that his father always told him. You can't change the time you got out of bed this morning. What has happened in the past, we can't change, but all we can do is be the best version of ourselves right now. As we wrap up today's episode, that is my challenge to you. Don't worry about yesterday, last night, or focus too much on tomorrow. Put your energy and effort on being the best you can be right now. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.